My primary commitment to this forest has not been to make it work economically, although perhaps I should change things, and that should be the number one priority. And that involves people, somehow having the forest serve people. But the commitment I always see as number one is the biodiversity of the forest, the health of the forest. And that's what I'm going to talk about in terms of what short-term things need to be done. Short-term maybe not being that short by many people's standards. And certainly there is no survival for this forest unless it has an economic reason to exist, because it will be destroyed for monoculture. So it is life or death for the forest. But the biggest change I've made, I mean, the roads were one change, but that was such a tiny portion of land, it doesn't matter. The biggest one was actually fighting pine beetle plague and saving a lot of the pines. So in some cases I saved pines, like there's a great stand of pines down there. I mean, there's pines everywhere. There's a great stand there. That still exists because I cut down pine beetle infected plagues nearby, or pines nearby. And so it started way down there a long time ago. That was 16 years ago. And the last 2 years have been tough. We've cut more pines in the last 2 years because of pine beetle plague. Maybe 3, but I don't know. I have to talk to the guys who know more about that. But it's been all over the area, and it's been fine with me because I've had great luck. The pine beetle plague has hit places that, well, a few of them I didn't want to cut down at all. Actually, the latest one I didn't want to cut down at all for years. I thought, we'll cut that in 30 years. I'll be dead. And we'll build something there and stuff, and it'll be a different place. But I'm actually kind of happy it happened now because it does fit in with the economic development options to have this place survive. Like, that area could be used economically, and it should not have those pines there to do it. So it's a little confusing. What I didn't want to have happen happened, but I accept it. So it doesn't matter. After that process, the next step is a forest cleanup process. The cutting of the pines has caused a lot of other pioneer species to come in and flourish. And there's 2 plants in particular that I don't want here that are pervasive. One of them's a grass, one of them's just kind of a weedy bush. Both are relevant, both not even close to in danger. They're everywhere they want to be. There's no shortage. So it's not like if I killed all of them right now, they would just come back, okay? One of them's not even native, and I don't know about the other one. Not that it matters that much. If it fits in, it fits in. It's a great pioneer species, and once the other trees all grow up, which they're doing, it will crowd out this other plant, both these other plants, and those will become less of an issue on their own with no work. But that will take another 30 years. So shorter term than that, my sense of time is pretty off and different than most people's. But in this case, I want very rapidly to actually have a team that goes in and we remove both of these plants as much as possible, at least in selected areas. And so I have a map of the entire forest, and there's areas that need to have things happen sooner rather than later. And so we could just focus on those. But there's a lot of them. And some of those could be solved with ruminants, with donkeys, for example, burros. That would be great. And yeah, that would be wonderful. But we can't really just have ruminants wandering around too long in a place. And the 2 plants I want to get rid of the most are likely not the ones they're going to eat the most. So this is a case where humans could do what ruminants can't do. Ruminants have their place, and I want to use them because they're cute. Like burros in particular, very cute. And it'd be great. But in this case, I want to use weed whackers, machetes, shovels, and I want to murder the hell out of these 2 species of plants. Now, there are a couple toxic ones we can get rid of, but the truth is those ones actually aren't just everywhere all the time. Those come in after a forest fire. Well, one of them I'm thinking of in particular. The other one I just don't see that much. I don't think I have very much of it. It's just not a big problem, so who cares about it? I just get out of kids' areas, you know. Make sure no kids eat it, because one of them has both of them have very attractive berries that a small child unsupervised might just eat. But there should never be any children unsupervised except in, this is a natural forest, or wild forest. Not natural. It's gone through cycles over the last 80 years and maybe before of change. But since the railroad came in, when the railroad came in, they cut down a bunch of trees. And so this is all just a forest, a chaotic changing forest now. And I'm now a big part of that. The cool thing is that if I get rid of these 2 types of plants that are annoying to me, the second stage thing I want to do is spend like $20,000 on just plant stuff, many of which will be not a bunch of one thing, but like 4 or 5 of a given species to make sure we get male and female if they're gendered. And then have a team of people, this is a very important part, have a team of humans dedicated over the next 5 years after that to reproducing them to a level we can get them in the ground that was cleared from the other plants that take over, and then naturalize some of those. Being very careful what we plant, nothing invasive, but having a massive diversity of the most valuable plants to humans that exist. And I mention the dollar figure because the only way to get those plants is to buy them. I mean, in some cases, yeah, I can go collect seeds or get cuttings somewhere, and there's many options for that. But the safest way is for me to get spreadsheets of what's available at nurseries of, things like olives and grapes. I want to try grapes out here. I'm trying out grapes. I've been trying them for some years now, and they're alive, but they're not thriving. And I just was reading about the problems the winery industry is having with selling grapes. The grape fields actually are having trouble selling grapes, and there's economic issues there. So I want to get these plants here. And apparently the Spanish, when they colonized, they actually tried to keep some valuable plants out of Mexico because they didn't want the competition from their colony. And it's like, that is the wrong way of thinking. When they colonized, they should have been trying to get more valuable plants there. And now the people of Mexico should be trying to collect all of the best plants that can survive without irrigation, without stressing out their ecology, without needing fertilizer, to get them to grow here with the food forests so people are going to survive when shit hits the fan, which it will. It always does. It always has. It's just a matter of time. So if we can make this into a living seed bank of the most valuable plants and get those, reproduce the hell out of them, and then from that, this can't just be one pocket. From that, also start training and encouraging and promoting the idea of turning this entire area into food forest. I think that'd be very attractive to certain kinds of weirdos like me. People who can see the future and people who care about that future. So that's stage 2. So first stage is probably a year to 2 of intense cleaning up of the forest, right? In a couple of ways, not just removing those 2 plants. There's a few other things that can be done. And some bulldozer work would be nice in there too, because my fire breaks are bad and I'm going to have a forest fire. It's a certainty. I've fought 4 of them. And so the best time to fight a forest fire is before it happens. So that's actually another huge priority thing that needs to occur. Like, that's more important than anything else, actually. Because if it all burns down, well, it'll still be all right. I mean, I'll have some issues, but but so far I haven't lost any buildings in any forest fires. But it's caused injuries and difficulties. And soon after the planting, after I plant these new plants, I'll have like baby fruit trees and things like that. And I don't want a forest fire to come and kill my babies. So I don't want to plant until I get rid of the risk of forest fire. or I limit how far a forest fire can go. And there's several issues with that. That could be a whole other video. But so we're looking at really a 10-year, I should make like a 10-year plan, which is about as far as I might live. And then plan for another 30 after that for whoever is going to be here after I die. And we can prepare for that now and train people for that now. And, you know, the longer term plan is having housing. That needs to also happen quicker because where are these people going to live who are going to be propagating plants and taking care of the forest? And how are we going to integrate animals into that and be raising rabbits and raising chickens so that we don't need to have cows? I don't want cows here. There's plenty of cows everywhere else. I'm not anti-cow. It just doesn't fit into my vision for what we're going to do here. So you can see some cool plants in here. This is just one example I'll give you. This little cool plant here. Oops, that was a little more than I wanted to pick. No problem. That's a cool plant. That is not vaporru. I thought it was vaporru because they look the same, and I grow them in the same place up there. I put these plants in the forest in a few spots, and they are not thriving, which is perfect because thriving could be scary. They're just kind of growing in some oak leaves where most things don't grow. Most of the ground here is not covered with plants. And so plants like that, plants like rosemary. Here's a near native plant. Well, here's one right here as well. This is a plant I got from an area nearby. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it has any use. It barely survives. It's clearly not invasive, even though it comes from a place nearby. But that's the reason why it would and it wouldn't be invasive. But the point is, I can barely grow it here. And it grows fine where I got it from. Whatever. Here's another one. This is a cute plant. It's kind of like a jade. It's jade-like, but different. And that would make a great house plant potentially. In fact, I should pot some of those up and try them out as house plants. I could even have I hadn't even thought of this before. This is a good idea. Like some of these plants might make good house plants, just like jades do, right? My mom, up in a totally different climate from here, when I was a kid, she grew jade plants. They were pretty, and I didn't think anything about them. I was a kid. It's like, whatever. It's a boring plant. Well, here they even flower. They're really happy plants here, and I put them out in the forest. They live outside. There they can't do that because there's snow and freezes, or they'll die. But, so anyway, something I hadn't thought of, because I've thought of like having a partner down near to the coast where it's hotter and getting plants to grow down there. So even the plants I can't grow here that are valuable in the world, trying to create a living seed bank, even if I can't grow them here, I can grow them somewhere nearby. That is good enough. All over this state, I want to collect the best plants of the world because there's a lot of microclimates in this state. Things are completely different on the coast than they are here. And there's places that are even higher and colder than where I live in this same state. Not that much higher, not that much colder, but it's a different spot. So, I want to try those out. But there's one climate I hadn't thought of, and it's not important in my opinion. It is important because it's within the realm of people's consciousness. Oh, these cedar seeds are about to come. My walnut tree died. That sucks. Gotta make more walnut trees. I had one over there I gotta go check on. I don't want to right now. I'm afraid I'll find it dead. But that one extra environment that I hadn't really considered is the home environment. Some people love their home house plants. I don't think they're important, mainly because I'm too lazy to water plants. I don't want to have to water plants. I don't even enjoy it. However, if I can come up with plants that are really exciting for people, for inside the home, then I can get those species to be living in places where people really take care of their plants. I mean, I've known at least 2 people back in Seattle where their houses were filled with plants. They love plants. They like taking care of them. And that does get the species to exist there. So when we're planting for climate change, when we're planting, understanding that the climate that is here now in a given place will not be the one that is there later, we can get those plants into people's houses, and someday they'll be planting them outside. If anybody lives. We shall see. That's not a bad idea. It doesn't feel like it's my primary objective. But it does have the advantage of directly involving people hands-on with plants. And I mean, I have other ways of doing that, like teaching kids and people how to germinate seeds, and they can germinate trees that they can then put out in their new friends' places who have forests and land. You know, people can do things on their porch. And they can do things in their yard. So I've always thought those aren't the real targets, but they are. And if I can get all the best plants around here, if I can reproduce them well enough and get them into people's yards, that's okay too. Like in some ways, it's a way to save a rare plant as well. For example, there's an orchid here who people go out and they cut the flowers of it each year, of this orchid that used to be more common and is now fairly difficult to find in the wild. It's being driven into extinction. And they cut the flowers off, meaning they're cutting off the sexual organs of the plant. They're cutting off its means of reproduction. And that is a horrible thing. I would rather that we learn how to reproduce that plant. It's a native orchid. It just grows in the trees here. But you'll rarely find where it grows. It grows on my property, but I need to do better at reproducing it too, because like I don't see any right here. And I want thousands of them. And I want to climb up the trees, put them way up in the trees, and then have the little seeds, spores, whatever the hell orchid seeds are called. And I want them to fall down into the right spots. And I'm working on it all. It's just it's a lot of work to do. I think I mentioned a team of, 5-10 people? Really, I need 10 people for 10 years. Something like that. I mean, I don't know. It's very hard to estimate these things. And it's a matter of degree of like how good a job do I want to do. And if I'm doing too good a job here, I can always expand it elsewhere because I want to expand it anyway. I mean, I'm planting agaves. Those are very valuable plants. And raising them from seed, we can produce tens of thousands of plants every year. Well, that's going to fill this forest up pretty quickly. And then I'll have even more seeds. And so at that point, I need to be having workshops and people come do it, learn how to grow, germinate that plant, and then take seeds and baby plants home with them and be making more. And it's a useful plant. I gotta make sure I don't slip in here. So I guess it's this very much multi-pronged attack on the problem, and different types of people are going to want to be involved with and or support different parts of it. So I have to kind of break it apart and then see what motivations people have to be involved. Because, you know, like I hadn't really even thought of the home plant market. Now the truth is, most of the plants that grow here, most of the ones that are important to the bees, the birds, the things that won't be in people's houses, because, you know, I don't really think of houses as being, in some ways, a legitimate ecosystem. But, you know, if it gets the plant out there, like the one that we talked about, it came from nearby. It does not grow like crazy here. It does not grow from seed here. The place I got it from is more rocky than here. And so maybe if I make a desert or make a more rocky area to mimic its microclimate. And in this case, I'm just mimicking a microclimate that's like 7 kilometers from here. It's so close. But it's different enough that that plant does not spread. And I got that plant about 18 years ago, is my guess. And I have one that's a main plant. I've got another one I made from a cutting. And I think I had some more that might have dried up because I didn't water them. I had them in pots. And so I haven't tested it. We would have to test things as house plants. I could actually make a test house plant thing here. Or I could also just find somebody with a big house who really likes plants and say, hey, I'm going to give you plants. And then we're going to record every one that I give you. And we're going to check back in every year. We're going to check back and see, did that plant live for you? And have more than one house we're trying it in. and then we see what lives here in a house, and then we try other climates, right? Like I mentioned, the jades don't grow outside in other cities, but they grow inside. But what happens when there's climate change? Now,